Hey guys, Ashley here with Crazy Brave Homeschool. I figured it was the perfect time of year to start doing some reviews of our first grade curriculum. So in this video, I'm going to be reviewing Blossom and Root, which is a program that offers a full spectrum curriculum, or you can buy their curriculum by subject. This was our first year of formal homeschooling. So I decided to get their full spectrum of curriculum because I was really looking for something to hold my hand a little bit, help me along my first year. And I really loved their approach to living books, a lot of hands-on activities. Their philosophy seemed to match Charlotte Mason and Waldorf. Charlotte Mason in light of their narration and copy work, their selection of living books, and then Waldorf in terms of some of their hands-on activities, a really gentle approach to introducing a lot of new topics. And let's see, I think that pretty much sums up the sort of philosophy as I understood it. Disclaimer. We are now, almost 8 months into our homeschool year, and we are currently only using one thing that I got from Blossom and Root. So let's jump into why Blossom and Root didn't work for our family. If you were with me last week, you may have seen a video I posted. It was a real chatty video about the problem with fairy tales and folk tales that I'm finding with our homeschool. And it was technically, I guess, targeted at Blossom and Root because that's the language arts program that we chose. But I took the video down because I didn't think it was fair to target them on this one when fairy tales and folklore seem to be a really common part of first grade language arts. And there were some things about the Blossom and Root language arts program that we really liked. There were some other things about their whole program that we liked. So I thought that it would be much more fair to do an actual review of Blossom and Root versus the video that I had posted a few days ago. So on that note, let's start with language arts. Their first grade language arts program looks like this. So Blossom and Root comes in a PDF, so you need to print everything or have it printed. I did get mine printed at a print shop and bound, but this is something you could easily do at home. I really don't want to do like a whole flip through type of thing, mostly because I don't have time today. But I will just show you a couple of pages here and kind of go over the breakdown. The cool thing about Blossom and Root is that they do offer a lot of freedom to just sort of like navigate the week-to-week material in ways that suit your family. Sorry about my dog. I don't even hear it anymore. So I will say their language arts program is really heavy on literature. I'd say that's number one. Number two would be the narration and literary prompt exercises. I hope that doesn't bother you. It probably does. And then I would say after that would come the phonics. But we didn't really love the way that the approach that they took to phonics because it was really loose and I needed a lot more hand holding. So let me try to give you an example of what I mean. They call their phonics program wordplay, which I think is sort of maybe loosely a Charlotte Mason term. This would be what 1 week would look like for the Blossom and Root language arts program. So the way that they break this down is that they have a literature selection where they tell you the recommended reading, and then they will tell you, which I appreciate, if it has a gentle ending or if this would not be a good book for sensitive learners. So she does offer a lot of different books if you choose not to go with that one. And there were definitely a few books that we chose not to go with. So I appreciated the other recommendations. There's always an optional poetry. She has a recommended poetry book. We didn't do a ton of that. There's always a literature project. Some of it is like based on Story Basket, like retelling through props, which I thought was really sweet. We did that several weeks. A lot of times it's an art project, something to help the child narrate back what the project was about. Oh my God, is my dog gonna stop? Sometimes there's a second literature project, which is just further enrichment, optional. There's always a journal prompt, which is really just like a question kind of built around maybe character or creative writing. And then there's a narration prompt. So narrate the story or your favorite part back to me. The wordplay would be what I was talking about with the phonics. So this is like, here is a list of words or word families to explore this week. And then if you can just see, like, it's very minimal. There's really not a lot of hand holding here. And I'll show you in the student notebook how she kind of further expands this a little. But it wasn't enough for me. So all in all, we got a separate phonics program. And then over here, once you've given your child a chance to play with this week's words and word families with tiles, blocks, or magnets, have them read that word list back to you. So, okay, we skipped over all of that. Plus, my daughter is an early first grader, very young, so we took our time with teaching her how to read. We are still in the beginning stages. Oh my God. I have an Australian Shepherd, so he's incredibly protective. Then there's these mini poems, which is like cutting out words to fit into the blank space of a poem. We did not do that either. Optional copywork section. We did that for several weeks, but I found that the copywork lines were getting like, well, they weren't getting. They had always been very small, narrow. And so my daughter's handwriting, she just wasn't understanding how to use the lines. And so she was writing way too small. So we ditched the copywork and we got our own. And then there's optional additional reading. So that would be like if you decided to read multiple books that week on a similar topic. So that's just like a week by week breakdown. It's pretty much the same every week. So that is a very brief look at the parent guide. There is a lot in the beginning about how to use this guide. She has the entire book list plus recommended books. She's really done her research with books, like in terms of just giving you several options. She gives you the recommended supply list for all of the lit projects. She gives you lots of tips on why she's chosen certain things, like certain materials or certain activities, like the storytelling basket. I mean, I will say it's a really well thought out program. Before I get to my opinion about it, I'll just show you quickly like the student notebook. I've shown this a little bit in past videos. So 1 week is probably like 6 pages of work, and we didn't do nearly that. So let's see, starting at week 17, this would be like the journal prompt where they ask a question. Would you want to be a mer person and live under the sea? This was based on the book The Little Mermaid. And then I would just dictate what she told me, and then she would draw a picture. So we would do that for 1 day, and then there's like a narration prompt, retell the story or retell your favorite part. This would be like this week's words. This is the part that we skipped, like the phonics portion. So those are just like you're playing with like letter magnets or tiles, or however you teach reading in your homeschool, you're using these words essentially. And then this is like the mini poem. So you would cut out these words and fit them into the poem up here. We didn't do that. This would be the copywork section. So it's not much. I appreciate it's just one sentence. But do you see what I mean? Like my daughter was just getting way too confused about how to use these lines, and I was trying to guide her, but it just wasn't going well. So we did copy work for, I don't know, 6 months out of this, and then we recently quit. I think and then that's 5 pages of student work a week. And then that doesn't include the literary project. Halfway through the year, she goes into a geography study. This tacks on, it's optional. And obviously, if you have your own geography, you don't need to do it. She tacks on about 5 country studies, plus this sort of introduction to geography, which is like map work, compass work, learning your continents and stuff. In my last video that I took down, so it doesn't really matter, I did talk about how the geography unit we liked it when we started it, and then the book list really took a turn for us, which is why we ended up quitting Blossom and Root Language Arts early. I will say for the geography study, it's a lot of worksheet work. So it's kind of like this stuff. So kids are learning how to follow directions. They're learning about a compass. They are learning how to read a map key. Here we're getting into identifying things about certain cities and countries. So this is probably the most like paperwork that we had done in our homeschool, honestly. And it went okay. It wasn't terrible, but it was a lot to tack on to what we were already doing in our homeschool. So then you get into the country studies, and the first country we did was Scotland. And then you would go into like the map of Scotland, the languages spoken there, plants, animals, celebrations, things like that, and then on to the next. And then she has paired a collection of folk tales with each country. So really thoughtful. I mean, I actually really appreciated the geography unit okay, so now we'll talk about the books. The books that Blossom and Root has paired with this program are very much based around fairy tales and folklore. There was a lot of like, in the beginning, like The Magic Fish, Mulan, Rapunzel, a spin-off of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, a spin-off of Little Red Riding Hood. Was there a Sleeping Beauty? No. There was a whole lit study on Cinderella around the world. Some of these we really liked, as long as they were fairly lighthearted, not too violent. My daughter's really used to fairy tales, honestly. She's been watching Disney for a long time. So I'm not going to really get into this because I just needed to talk it out on my last video that I took down, and I feel like I've talked it out. But for your information, if you're considering Blossom and Root Language Arts, the stories in the beginning, while there are a lot of fairy tales, they're okay. They're pretty gentle. There's also a lot of great character building books. I wish that there had been more, to be honest. I didn't feel that we needed so much folklore and magic. I liked the books built on character. Once you get into the geography unit in the second half of the year, particularly the Scottish folktales, the stories get pretty dark. There's definitely more violence. The book itself is really beautiful, but the illustrations are sort of dark. It's like, I don't know, like I kept using this word sinister last time, and I guess that's the word that just keeps coming up. So I will just say I thought that those stories were way too mature for a 6 or 7-year-old. And then I read ahead into the stories of India, Vietnam, South America, and Africa. And I just felt that a lot of those stories were also ones that my daughter wouldn't really connect to anymore. She's much more interested in the real world now. I feel like she's been through the fairy tale thing, and she has a lot of questions about what's really going on in our world. So we stopped the language arts curriculum a few months early. We were supposed to stop in April, or we were going to finish in April, and we're not doing it anymore. So what I will say, the things that we got out of Blossom and Root Language Arts the most were a fairly decent book list and the reading comprehension. My daughter is great at narrating. I don't know if she like always was or if it was Blossom and Root that really helped that for her, but her reading comprehension is so good. So because we were using that as the bulk of this program, I didn't feel too bad about quitting early since we just were not liking the book recommendations anymore. So that is my review of Blossom and Root Language Arts. I hope I didn't forget some like major parts. If you have any questions, please leave it in the comments. Now let's jump into their science. I have talked about Blossom and Root science quite a bit before, and so I kind of feel like a broken record. This program didn't work very well for us. I will give you my pros and cons. The pros are that this earth science program gives families a lot of freedom because there's a lot of options to choose from depending on the type of family or learning style that your family has. So there are recommendations if you just love books, if there are recommendations if you're a lab type, like tabletop working kind of family, if you love the outdoors, things like that. There are quite a few reviews on Blossom and Root, so I don't really feel like I need to get super deep into this. I really just kind of want to give like our perspective. But unfortunately, even with all of the options and even with like 3 or 4 options in the lab guide, I didn't feel that they were like creative enough. They weren't experimental enough. I felt like they were a little blasé. I should give you an example. Okay, I mean, I'm just going to pick an example without even thinking about it just to see if I'm on track here. Okay, so wonder number 18 would be week number 18, bodies of water. So there's always just like one page. There's these main messages, these main points to get across. So if you had a child who was really interested in this, it's a lot of work for the parent to find more to say than just 3 little sentences. Right? So they do give you options for deep diving, like with the books, but you've got to find all the books. You have to read through them. You have to find and highlight or bookmark everything that you want to say about it. There is very little that they tell you to say. So there's no hand-holding in the science curriculum, which is really tough for me because I'm not naturally inclined to teach science. So there are possible rabbit trails listed here. With ponds, streams, oceans, okay. And then there's always these 3 options. For the minimalists, you would just read through the Smithsonian Spine book that they recommend for the program on these certain pages, and that's it. Okay. Number 2, for the book basket folks, you would just read a lot more. You would get all these books that they recommend here, and you would just keep reading. For the visual learners, there are a couple of video recommendations for each week. I didn't typically love the video recommendations. Many of them are sci-fi kids, and my daughter can't stand that woman. So unfortunately, we would have to oftentimes find our own YouTube videos. From the laboratory guide, see all these options? That's great, but let's look at those options for bodies of water. Okay, well, this is what I did. I put a big thing through it. So this is a perfect example. This is me probably being frustrated too, just like, ugh, no, this is not for us. Let's see. Oh, and then there's one on the other side. So this is no joke. I literally just picked this topic randomly, and I literally crossed out the entire lab guide pages for it. Okay, so here's one. For the outdoor learners, from where I stand, water. What you will need: access an area with a view of water. Go on a walk or hike to find high ground, and once you're there, spend a few minutes with your child looking at the water. Literally, like, and I don't know, well, we live on the coast. We're very lucky that we see water all the time. So obviously we wouldn't do that because like we do that all the time. We wouldn't do that we wouldn't intentionally like do this when we go to the water all the time. Okay, for the tabletop crowd, Play-Doh, landforms and bodies of water. Set out the Play-Doh, show your child how to make a model of an island. Ask your child if they can remember other landforms and bodies of water that you learned about. Play with Play-Doh. That's not scientific. That's like 3-year-old activity. That's what my 4-year-old does when he doesn't know what else. Yeah, that's a huge letdown. For the table lab crowd, here's another option. Shoreline in a tray demo. So a baking dish with blue food colored water, flour or cornmeal. So it sounds like you're supposed to like make sand or like a shore. Okay, well again, we live by the coast, so we would just go to the beach. We wouldn't do that. If you didn't live by any water, I could maybe see that being kind of fun. And then for the crafts and projects families, water body memory game. So you would just get index cards and draw little pictures of bodies of water and play memory. That's not scientific to me either. So that's a really good example of like how a lot of these options were just like a pretty big letdown for us. I was not into many of those options. So we ended up quitting Blossom and Root Science, loosely quitting because we did go back to it sometimes. About 6 weeks in, my daughter was so not into it. I was so not into it. So we let it go. The reason we go back to it once in a while is because there are a couple topics in here that my daughter is interested in, like clouds and rainbows and hurricanes. And then specifically, there is a supplemental program with Blossom and Root. I've talked about this a lot too. Our book seeds. So book seeds are based on a piece of literature. This is this one, for instance, The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. All of the book seeds issues, there are 5 science issues that come with each grade, I think. First grade came with 5 or 6. I did buy this bundle, and it's basically a collection of STEM activities that are based around a living piece of literature about somebody who had some amazing scientific achievement. So I thought that was really cool. And for some reason, I've said this a million times, I'm a broken record on YouTube with this one. I don't know why the activities in the lab guide are so much less cool than the activities in the book seeds. So this always has a lot of really cool ideas. Make a wind-powered boat. We're getting into this next week. We haven't done this one yet. And then it has a whole, like, this is a lot more information than just the 3 little sentences in this. This is like a whole page on where does energy come from, different forms of energy. This is a whole page on capturing the wind, like in measuring the wind, how you would do that. Here we're gonna build a wind sock. Here's an art study with a windmill. So we're gonna do a little bit of watercolor painting. This nature study I actually think is cool. You go outside and you intentionally observe animals on a windy day. So what are the animals doing with the wind? Are they going with it? Are they protecting themselves against it? What's happening? Here's a recipe from something that this boy in Africa would have eaten. I like that. This is build a kinetic sculpture with just like a paper plate. It's like one of those like pretty things that spin in the wind and look like they're moving, spiraling. Create a wind-powered race. So this is something my kids would love. You crumple up a piece of paper, you use a straw, you make like a racetrack kind of thing, and then you would race. Like my 6 and 4-year-old would love that. So that's cute, and it requires almost nothing. This is a really cool idea, a wind photo collage. So you go outside with they would have like my camera, and they would take pictures of like if you could photograph wind, what would it look like? So something blowing, a blowing flag or trees or something like that. I think that's a really neat idea. So super cool, right? This is a deep dive into wind and energy that we're going to get so much more out of that while comparing it to a great piece of literature. We love the book seeds. We've done every single one of them, or we're finishing up with them. I'm going to buy the 2nd grade bundle. She also has a whole nature book seeds bundle on every season. We've done the winter one. Last winter was on the book Frederick. Probably my favorite children's book I've ever read, that I never read as a kid. So we love the book seeds. That's the only thing that we're currently still using from Blossom and Root. Something else that we did use, they're little nature and science notebooks. Since we stopped doing the science program, I was able to still use this as a log for my daughter. So like, I'm not going to get into what we do for science because that's my last video, which I can link. But I will have her draw what she learned about that week, and then I will narrate it. Or she will narrate it, and I'll dictate it at the bottom. So we were able to use that. One also came with their nature study. So my son got one too, which is great because he wants whatever his sister has. So I was able to use the notebooks for our own kind of do-it-yourself science that I put together. Okay, so two more things from Blossom and Root that we barely used, so I don't have a whole lot to say about it. They have a separate nature study. We did not do one of these. Yeah, it surprised me that we didn't use the nature study at all because we do love nature. Nature study is sometimes a hard thing to implement in homeschool. It's hard to be intentional about it when you're trying to get through your core subjects. But I don't think that that was the entire problem with this. I think that these nature prompts, I'll call them, were really similar to the science lab prompts. Well, technically, she has paired the nature study with the earth science program, so a lot of the nature prompts like are directly correlated to whatever topic you're on that week. But for example, let me just find one, for example, that we wouldn't have wanted to do. Okay, well, here's one. The boulder basking. This is, you know, all you're supposed to do is just go find a large rock and perch yourself on it. I mean, I don't know. It's just that one. It's just kind of a joke. Build a den to escape the sun. I mean, and then this is much more complicated, right? So it's kind of like something super easy, like just go sit on a rock and bask in the sun. Or go build an outdoor fort. Like that's really tough for a 6-year-old and not super safe all the time. So like sticks, rocks, branches, a sheet, and a blanket, and you would build an escape from the sun. I don't know. So, you know, and I really did read through the entire thing, and I just, I was not inspired by this nature study. So I'm really just not even going to say much more about it. And then the last thing is the exploring the math in art. So this was our art study for the first several weeks. You loosely study a different artist each week. Many of the artists were artists I hadn't heard of, and many of them were. Some of them were Kandinsky, some were Picasso, and then there was some that was just like Aboriginal dot painting or like Navajo rugs. And then with each lesson, so like one page would just be one lesson, you would find the math in art, you know, which it tells you what, you know, okay, so part one would be the picture study. So you have to go online and find a picture of this week's art. Print it off if you want. So it doesn't come with any of that. I would have appreciated like a piece of like an example of the art in this box, but in each one, it was just like a graphic. I also would have appreciated a little bit of color too, because it's a it's an art program. So you need to find the art, and then you like do it like a very mini little picture study with them on that. And then you explain to them the math concept. So you would explain like how there's symmetry or something like that. And then part 3 would be exploring the art. So then she does give you directions on how to do said art project. You have to come up with all of your own supplies. I did find that many of the weeks, like the supplies were pretty random, like buttons or spaghetti or tinfoil or permanent markers. So it was a lot of gathering every week. which I didn't love. And I stopped getting inspired. And this has been a hard one for me to nail down exactly why. Like the kids did enjoy most of the projects that we did. I think I got sick of just gathering all of like the little pieces every week and printing off the artwork. And maybe like explaining the math concept in art was not super fun for me either. I just wanted to look at beautiful art, you know. I just mostly just want the kids to like paint. So I'm not going to say this one was a bad program. We definitely stuck with it for probably like 12 weeks, and maybe we'll come back to it again. But unfortunately, out of the bulk of Blossom and Root, we only used their book seeds. And I really am just surprised about it. I thought that their language arts was something that we were going to use till the very end. We did do a huge portion of this curriculum, so I really do think that I can give that, a thorough review on it. And then I would say out of the science, we probably, by the end of the year, will have done maybe 12 units out of the 36. Okay, so that's it. I realize I didn't do like a super proper flip through on any of this. If there's anything else that you would have liked to have seen from this program, please let me know. I would be happy to go over it more. I am feeling ready to move on from Blossom and Root. I have a lot of fun ideas and plans for second grade curriculum and in all of these areas, in all of these subjects. Aside from the book seeds, which I'm so excited to continue, we are finished with Blossom and Root. Okay, so thanks so much for joining me on this one, and I'll see you next time.